If you've been around for a while following Black Girl Lost Keys, you've heard me talk about guarding your yes, where you stop letting people talk you into saying yes to everything. But in this instance, I let a couple friends talk me into doing a live podcast episode, and it went really, really well. We all did an after party after an ADDA event. We all were hanging out in this cute little fictional online world called the Addiverse. There were people from all over the world talking about ADHD, and I'll link you to all that information in the show notes because I think they're a great org and that you'll like them. So in the meantime, here's some snippets from our live Twitter chat that we did to record the episode, and you'll hear some familiar voices and maybe a few new voices. Enjoy. My name is Renee Brooks, but you may have heard of me by my blog name, Black Girl Lost Keys. I started the blog to incorporate my culture into my experiences with ADHD. Managing ADHD isn't easy. We have challenges in some key areas like forgetfulness, showing up late, losing stuff, and big emotions. Sometimes you find your stuff, sometimes you find yourself. That's life with lost keys. On our podcast, you'll get to be a fly on the wall to everything. Talks with friends, other ADHD adventures, and a lot more. It's time to get started. Speaking of time, this podcast is proudly sponsored by Teemo, a paid subscription app that helps you organize your life, stick to your routines, and work toward your personal goals in a visual and motivating way. To learn more about Teemo, head to blackgirllostkeys.com/Teemo. Dr. Loucresie Rupert is in the room with us. How you doing?
Hi guys, doing good.
Tell the people who you are.
So I am I'm a psychiatrist. I see kids with all diagnoses and I see adults with developmental disabilities. I also am autistic and ADHD myself and mom of neurodiverse kids. Yeah, I think that covers it. My world is pretty much neurodiversity 24/7. I'm a person that I'm a fierce advocate for like my kids and my patients. Not so much for myself, unless I'm mad. When I'm mad, then I'm like a bulldog. So even though like people expect me to be like this great advocate, because I am for like everyone else but myself. Like, so for myself, I have to remember to like write things down so I don't forget to ask, or maybe bring somebody with me that could be an advocate, or call somebody on the phone and just kind of sharing those tips of making sure you advocate for yourself. Or if you feel like you're in a spot where you're not going to do that, that you can have somebody there to help with that. So I enjoyed talking about that today. Heard a couple of horror stories. The lady there that was blind, because we were also talking about like traveling and advocating for yourself when going through like airports and, bus stations or whatever. But apparently at TSA, like took her stick from her. But also I was like, wait, say that one more time for me. I don't understand what you're saying. It's really bad. And I was like, well, I think sometimes, they do tests like your mobility equipment, like they do that little liquid thing. But if they take it from you, they definitely should also have you a guide until they're able to hand it back. So, yeah, you got to make sure you advocate for yourself in every space because people are wild.
It really does. And I think people really struggle to advocate for themselves, mainly because they've never been really taught how to advocate for themselves in the medical system. Like, Doc, do you have any recommendations for us?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, even me as a physician, I'm going through, for those who don't know me, past 2 years, I've been having some physical issues that's caused limited mobility to the point that like now I'm using a scooter and a walker, and we really don't even know what's going on yet. Like there has been no diagnosis. There's been some recent testing that maybe is giving us an idea, but it's been 2 years of even me as a physician, but I'm also a Black woman, so there's that. So sometimes the physicians like just straight up not listening, or even if they are listening, they're just like, we can't find anything wrong. And it kind of got to the point where, yes, a diagnosis is important, but like nobody was coming up with a plan. Like I need like a pain management plan, like I need like a function plan. Like the plan can't just be, we don't know what's wrong. So I actually had to really, even though I literally advocate for my patients as a living, like I get paid to do this, I had to learn like how to advocate for myself. In all of those spaces, like I said, when going to the doctor, just making sure I write things down, or if I feel like I'm gonna get too frustrated, making sure I bring somebody with me. Like at the airport, traveling, I had to learn how to advocate for myself because I don't know where you guys live, but MSP is bad about like if you ask for wheelchair assistance, they'll drive you around like in the big cars, but then drop you off and expect you to walk the rest of the way. And so the first couple times that happened, I was like, they were like, oh, the gate's right there. And I'm like, okay, sure, I believe you. The gate was not right there. So I had to learn to like advocate for myself. If you're dropping me off at the elevator, I need somebody downstairs with a wheelchair to meet me, blah, blah, blah. So really going through these situations, even though, like I said, I'm one of those psychiatrists that I go to the IEP meetings with my kids when I can. I call my patients my kids. So I was very used to that world, but the world of like mobility disability was very new for me, and really helped me figure out quickly how I needed to advocate for myself. And I think really the number one thing is just don't, if you know the answer doesn't sound right, don't take that for an answer, whether that means getting another doctor. And sometimes patients maybe don't agree with what the doctor is saying, because maybe, you don't actually, we go to school for a lot of years, so it might be a difference of opinion. But I'm not talking about like a difference of opinion. When you're being like discriminated against or not heard. And this is, you just like, you try, call the patient. Most big centers have a dedicated patient advocate line. So if you feel like you're not being treated fairly or not being heard by your physician or your clinician or the nurse practitioner or whatever, call the patient advocate line. If that doesn't work, get somebody else. I've had to do it. Like I've had to change primary care doctors, and honestly, I'm about to change again because the one I have now is fine. But for me to be so complicated, she really like just kind of worries about my blood pressure. And I'm like, but I also might have multiple myeloma, so I need you to know everything that's going on. And she's like, but let's just worry about your blood pressure.
I'm sorry,
That's not even high.
back up, rewind back, pause. Multiple myeloma?
Maybe. It's very, probably not, but so there's the whole thing. So I had some blood work that said I might have that, or I might have what's called, I forgot the initials, but it's basically like have that blood testing, but it's not actual multiple myeloma. So it's like MGCUS, or this thing called Poem syndrome, which actually does match a lot of my symptoms. So Poem syndromes is also kind of in that realm, but it's not complete cancer, but it's like you get deposits in different parts of your body that can cause like pain and swelling, which is what has been going on. So I'm like, well, maybe now there's blood work where people would believe me. So that's good. And all of those things have treatment, so that's good. But
it makes sense with the pain that you've been having, because you know it has multiple myeloma, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like when she did the stem cell transplant and all of that. That's what it was for.
Yeah.
That's why. So like, and it started like she's the way she found out was like she was in physical pain, thought she had bursitis in her elbow. They did the body scan. There were holes all through her bones.
So yeah. So it's really weird to kind of get, I share, for people that are my Facebook friends, I'm pretty open. I share my journey purposely because as a psychiatrist, I want to, destigmatize both mental health neurodiversity, physical health issues, whatever. So I shared my journey pretty openly. So it was kind of weird to get like messages that were basically like, congratulations, they finally actually found something that's possibly wrong that has a treatment. And I'm like, I actually felt the exact same way. But it's just one of those weird things where you're like, yay, they found something wrong. Because I'm tired of saying everything's perfect, but I can hardly move. Like that
That's how you know
was
you
not a good
desperate
time.
for it. Like I feel like that's a good segue for how like that relief you feel when you get the diagnosis. I feel like the
Right.
ADHD diagnosis process
Right.
is similar because this whole time you've been trying to figure out like what's going on with me, and when you get the ADHD, you're like, yay, and people are like, why are you so excited? And you're excited because you have an
Like it
answer.
makes sense now. Like my world made sense now.
Yes. So that's how you advocate for yourself when you're talking through the medical system. Evelyn, I'm gonna ask you because like I feel like Evelyn's really the one that taught me. How do you advocate for yourself within your family unit? Evelyn's a master at this. Wait, you'll hear.
Well, I don't know how great I am at it now that my children are grown. I'm not sure,
She knows how
but
to tell her family to stop the nonsense.
I do know how to tell my family to stop the nonsense, and that was just something. I don't know that I ever could have done it for me. Um, and of course, I was not diagnosed. I'm one of those folks that got diagnosed after their kids were. And I don't and even though I felt beat up in my family and all those things prior to having children and them being diagnosed, once they were diagnosed, yeah, I was all kinds of mama bear for them. And so it was just a matter of letting folks know that, we had enough issues going on and self-esteem was enough of a problem and he struggled with enough other things that I wasn't going to have family be one of the things that was a problem for him. And so there are family members to this day that we talk much to, if at all. He's probably made better relationships with them now because I don't get over stuff easily 30 years later, but so he's probably gotten over it more than I have, but um we had to figure it out. And even with I always talk about with my mother and grandmother. My mother was like an old school teacher. She taught for 50 years before she retired, 50 some years, and she taught everywhere from a one-room schoolhouse in West Virginia to in the city in Chicago, where I was born and raised. And she like ADHD, we don't have time for that. What is that? That's something little white boys have. We don't,
Right.
you just need to beat that boy some more. And so while initially she couldn't necessarily get on board with the diagnosis, she still respected what I thought and had enough love for her grandchild that if there was any arguing about it, it was never in front of him. And she never made him feel bad about it. If anything, it was ragging me on my parenting skills until she figured out what it was and we taught her and she learned and finally was able to accept it. Um, but I'm not sure that I would have hesitated to cut her off too. I definitely cut off some of my in-laws. Definitely cut some of them off.
They're so
And
easy to cut off, aren't they? Lord forgive. Never mind, never mind. Y'all never heard me say that.
So can you give us an example of like maybe some things you said? So I know like with me and my mom, which my mom is ADHD, never died, never formally diagnosed, but I mean I'm a psychiatrist. She's definitely ADHD. I am too. Definitely got it from her. And like she kind of accepted that. And me and her are actually doing really well right now. But both my kids are adopted. Both my kids are special needs. When she moved in with me to help, I was in residency, all that great stuff, doing all this good stuff, love her. But baby, that difference of parenting opinions, because I adopted as a
oh
single mom.
yeah,
That was
yes,
really, it was actually really rough until I ended up renting her a house outside of my space. And I think now that she doesn't live with me, and also that, I make sure any evaluations or whatever she's a part of, and so she doesn't hear it just from me. Because even though I'm a
right,
psychiatrist, I'm her daughter, so what do I know, right?
right,
Um,
exactly.
but it took me a really long time to kind of get my mom on the same page. because I really needed her help as a single mom. So what were some of those things you did that maybe people could not take years to do like me? Like we're finally in a good
Well,
place, but it was
right,
years.
it took you. I get it. Well, I think part of what did help, interestingly enough, was the fact that we did live with her
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and he had not yet been diagnosed, but she clearly saw that he was a different kind of kid. She
Mm-hmm.
so so she saw that right off the bat. I think, like, the conversations, like I said, she never did anything in front of him or say in front of him, but the conversations with me would be like, and I'd say, no, mom, I'm not gonna spank him because that's not what he needs. If he could help doing that, he would, and he can't. So let's not. Um, and it was, I'm gonna tell you honestly, actually, a lot of what helped was when I joined Chad, when I started our Chad chapter, local Chad chapter. She didn't necessarily come to meetings, but she, I conducted enough business around her that I think she started to pick stuff up. And
Mm-hmm.
I even think that she may have even started to relate it to some of the kids she had taught over the years. But it
Mm-hmm.
was just, honestly, and I'm gonna say it's it was not easy to do. Although what may have made it easier was, part of me was like, I'm saying this for myself too. These are the things that I wish I could have said to her
Mm-hmm.
about me, because clearly I was undiagnosed all those years. But just being very clear about our parenting style and boundaries, and what was acceptable and wasn't, and what wasn't. And it's not like, my mama abused me. She did get in them
Right.
hit them Hot Wheel tracks beatings every now and then, but it was not as if, that was an everyday occurrence and she was abusive toward us. But it was just, she, I think, was more confused than anything. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that helping people to understand in whatever ways you can, whether it's giving them something to read, because I've done that with partners and said, okay, so if you're gonna live with me, this is what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Or just explaining. So a lot of times I would explain to her why he was doing something, or if why he had to have medication and those kind of things. And I think that just being patient and explaining after a while is what did it. But I'm also going to say that did not work for every member of my family. Now, it might have worked for her because that was her first grandbaby, and she, she wasn't going to be cut off from him and was going to do whatever she could to support us.
Right.
But it certainly did not work with everybody, and there were people that we had to just say, I don't need this. Sorry. we can live our lives without it. What's so interesting to me is my ex-husband, who has all kinds and had all kinds of issues around his own addiction and depression and all kinds of stuff. And you know how men have this kind of reputation, especially when it's their boys, of not being accepting of ADHD. He
Mm-hmm.
was great. He was great. And he even like jumped on some of his family about
Mm-hmm.
how they treated him. um so I just think, you don't want to just cut people off. And so we tried to work with them, but if we couldn't, I just couldn't let that be one more burden on him or on me.
Right.
And so we had to let him go. So I just think, I don't know, I don't have a magic bullet, but I just think, trying to explain as best I could, and especially when there were things that they clearly didn't understand or were frustrated by, certainly helped. And I'm gonna tell you what else that helped, it like in everything, and still does help us as a family, is humor helped a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to laugh at things, and I think not enough folks can laugh about their ADHD or their kids' ADHD. And what was important was that I taught my kids how to laugh at themselves as well as at me, about these things are going to happen, so we can either laugh or cry about them. What you want to do?
Laughter is
Right.
a really important component of self-awareness, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. Like, if you're
Absolutely.
always taking yourself seriously, it's a little bit impossible for you. Like, I don't know. I think it's important.
Do you hate the feeling of fumbling around in the morning? Do you feel like you're always scrambling around to try to decide what order you should be doing things in? A lot of people with ADHD can benefit from a great morning routine. That's why I would recommend, if you're trying to put in the work to start a new routine, take a look at our sponsor, Teemo. It's an app that helps you organize your life, stick to your routines, and work toward your personal goals in a visual and motivating way. To learn more about Teemo, head to blackgirllostkeys.com/Teemo. That's TIIMO, Teemo.
It's like I got all my favorite peeps with me tonight. Melanie's here. Who else I see? There's Michelle. There's Renee. Renee. Hey, Renee. And Mel is coming on up. Mel, we're talking about advocacy around your ADHD, wherever, like whatever you have to say about advocacy, especially like if y'all want to touch specifically on where you feel like blackness enters into that area of advocacy, like please emphasize, feel free.
But no, I totally agree with you and Evelyn. Of course, you and Evelyn know this already because we've cut up together. Laughing
Yes.
is so much of it, and so just to give people background, I have 4 kids, and my husband has ADHD, and I have ADHD, and 2 of my 4 kids have ADHD. So one of my children with ADHD, my older one, my second eldest, she also has a connective tissue disease that affects her heart and her lungs. And so I've had to do a lot of that advocacy for my kids in school. um, and it's important that you teach them. I don't know. I think my approach when it came to ADHD specifically, I there was a lot of validation. There was a lot of, what, we do that differently, and that's funny. How everybody might not do it that way, and that's okay too. But when it came to my daughter's connective tissue disease, like that, it was a whole different, different thing, because that's a life or death matter. And with that also, I just let her figure things out on her own, navigating what her limits were and things like that. But with ADHD, it's funny, Renee and I had a conversation. I'm not medicated, and neither one of my kids are medicated, and I'm not anti-medication. The thing with my children was that I homeschooled them until they went to trade school in high school. So I said, Renee, a lot of times with the medication component, it's people's inability to deal with your ADHD. For some people, it's like they have trouble with their functionality. That wasn't our experience, because, I worked as a teacher for years, and teachers can get away with being like really bubbly and hyper and being all over the place. And, I can focus on doing like a whole bunch of things at once and getting a lot done. But then now I run my own business. So there's nobody like who's going to check me. I rest when I need to rest. I do things when I need to do things. And with my kids homeschooling, they were able to do the same thing. If they couldn't focus, they couldn't focus. No big deal. So they get older, if that's something they decide to do, then they can do that. They can get medicated. But
I think the interesting thing about that is that they're able to just be themselves, and then if they like, the power's in their hands, and it's not based on the output of other people and what their opinions of how they're functioning are. So they get to say, I feel like I'm not doing that, like I'm not able to function the way I want to. So now I'm deciding to go investigate this other tool versus everybody else is frustrated with me. I guess I better take this. I like
yeah,
that approach.
yeah, yeah.
And it still I think it empowers them and doesn't demonize the medicine. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Diane, I see you. How are you? Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you, honey.
Hey, no worries. I'm in the UK and it's 4:13 in the morning. I don't know why the hell I'm up, but I'm
I
taking
don't
a...
either. I was listening to me at 4 in the morning. What are you doing in here?
Do you know what? I decided I'm just going to clean my dishes and listening. I thought I'd stop and make a comment about the advocating at work scenario.
Yes.
So just like most women in their 40s, I got diagnosed really late. And one of the first things I did was I told everybody. Even though people were telling me not to tell anybody, I told everybody because I just can't keep stuff in. I overshare too much. And one of the things that I did at work, because I freelance, I work from home, is I changed my email signature. And in my email signature, I kind of state that, hey, if you're a client who's neurodiverse and you might have different ways for communicating, please hit me up. What else did I write? Please hit me up. If you find the project might be overwhelming, please let me know. And I kind of also offered when I get new clients, I give them like an onboarding PDF, because I'm a web designer basically. So I give them a PDF that says, hey, this is how I work. I don't work on Wednesdays. Please don't message me on WhatsApp. Please don't use social media to message me. I have ADHD, so in fact, when we do projects, and I might miss out certain things, so there may be some spelling mistakes. Please give me some grace. Like I over advocate for myself, I think, when it comes to my ADHD. But since I've put it in my email signature, what I've noticed is that it's made other people more comfortable in speaking to me about their own stuff going on. So if someone is overwhelmed by a project, they let me know really quickly. I had a client recently who was autistic, and me and him worked really well, because I'm a bigger picture person and he was very much into the finer details. So our project went really, really well. When he was annoyed because he's called me 3 times and I haven't answered, it was easier to have that conversation with him about why I was like that than the opposite. So with my son, I'm still trying to work on how to advocate with the school, because I feel like the education system over here is a little bit backwards. I don't know how well it is in the States, but we are catching up at the moment. We've got teachers that don't even believe in ADHD, so it's an ongoing struggle. But yeah, that was all I really wanted to say.
I'm glad that you came up. Thank you and I think you make a very good point about putting that in your bio. Like, it made me start thinking, like, when you're allowed to communicate in the way that it's easiest to communicate for you, like, that really, like, when you're not having to take that time and mask and translate, how much brain space are you freeing up? Like, how much
Yeah.
easier must it be for a person to be able to think and communicate when they're able to do it in the way that works best for them? That's really profound. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
And it's so simple. A lot of the adjustments that we ask people to make are very simple adjustments that anybody could ask for. So
Exactly. One of the adjustments I say to people as well when they email me is to send things in bullet point form, like don't like 1, 2, 3, rather than sending me massive paragraphs, because I will not read it. My brain thinks it might have read it. My brain thinks I might have read it. I might have comprehended it, but I haven't. When I go back, I have to read things back at least 4 times, and even then, I'm still not sure what the hell is going on. So I tell people in my PDF, hey, when you're sending me updates or emails, please keep it succinct and give me a few days to reply back to you. So don't bombard me with have you got it yet, or whatever. Or another thing they can do as well is, if they're going to send me an email, put need your reply in the actual title. That's really helped me as well, because sometimes people send me a message and I look at it and I think, well, there's no question in there, so I don't need to respond. and that's it. And then I'm not thinking in my head, actually, someone's waiting for me to say, hey, thank you for the email. I've got it and I'm going to look at it. I don't work like that. If you haven't put a question mark to what you've said, I'm not replying to you. So by putting this email needs a reply in your subject, that also helps me know that I need to respond as well. But yeah, it's little things that we need. It's not anything big. It's just a little bit of things.
Oh my gosh, I was actually just talking about this today. Me and Evelyn were laughing about this on Twitter because I do the same thing. Like my eyes gloss over and I'm done. And then Renee calls me her mom's name because I'm like that. And, but yeah. And so like, and then I have another friend who also has ADHD who makes fun of me because I tweet in like short sentences and then I put spaces in between each of the sentences. So because that's how I would read it. But then I also have that part, you know, how people with ADHD, I know you guys can't tell I go on and on because I'm going on and on now. But you know how people with ADHD, like totally like, I'll have to explain, I'll say a word and I got to explain that word to you. So then I've got like parentheses in my tweets, like, you know, and then like 2 sets of parentheses because I'm explaining the explanation. So it's just a mess.
Yes, it's a meme
Do
going
not
around right
forget-
now about that whole parentheses or ellipsis thing that like university people do, and I'm like, yeah,
right. I was just going to say, do not forget the ellipses. Do not forget those.
Yes.
I live for those.
Yes, because you know I'm trailing off in thought. You got to let the reader know. You know.
You should see how many of those titles to those blog posts have ellipses. Well, not ellipses, or what, a colon, a regular one. Colons are my favorite. Like the, which, never mind. It's too late at night. Anyways,
I got it, because I'm also dirty. For real, like to have, like, I tell Renee, my biggest beef is that they assume I don't have ADHD. I have like 99 billion markers of ADHD, but I'm organized. And then so because people see I'm organized, it's like, but you don't have ADHD. You're just annoying.
You're just annoying.
You're just annoying. And the fact that you're organized is also annoying.
It's annoying, yes.
Right.
I'm very
That's probably the most annoying.
Yeah, I'm very annoyed about that.
Annoying.
But seriously, though, and then I know Renee, I'm surprised she didn't send a bomb in the mail because I have lectured her about organizing and remembering things before, too. And it's like, I'm like, you need to remember that. But
my brain goes, not gone.
I'm like, but seriously,
I put everything on the calendar.
One thing, right? That's what I was gonna say. Put it on the calendar, and that's the thing. It's not that my brain works any better than anybody else with ADHD. It's just that that's one skill that I've honed in on, and I think it's like as a Gen Xer, like nobody cared about my problems. It was like I just needed to get it together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I put it on a calendar. If you've got an iPhone, you can also set a reminder. Renee is really good with, like, she makes her calendar constant. You yell at her, you know? So you got to do that. You set multiple reminders for appointments. So like that very moment somebody tells you, you have an 8 a.m. appointment, like stop everything. Stop singing the songs in your head. Stop tapping your foot and put in your phone that you have that appointment. And then set the reminders immediately, you know, ask Siri to do it for you and then move on to the next thing. But it's like, for me, organization is that one thing. You know what? One of the things I did to train myself to be on time to stuff is I used to be that person who had all of my clocks turned like faster so that I always thought I was late for things.
Yes.
And then now I have my clocks at regular times. But
my math skills have really improved.
Right, because you're like,
okay, I need to break in and tell you all, you can't just set your clocks faster. This is a trick I learned with those
for sure.
2 adult children. No, every clock in our house was on a different time.
Yes.
So nobody knew what time it really was.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever knew what time it really was.
Yes.
Right. And so we always were usually ahead because we always assumed
right.
whatever. So you can't set them you can set them, you know, I know people that say they set their clocks early and they'll say, well, I set them 10 minutes early. That doesn't do, you have to set all of them early at a different time.
Right. Because like you said,
at a different time.
You and Renee said, because you will start telling yourself, nah, I got time. You know,
right.
You know, but you do. Like,
Exactly.
The ADHD brain is a jerk, like legit. Like we're like, anyway, like you with the money, you're like, anyway, take my money, I don't care.
Right. It's totally right. Take that little bit of money. I was gonna say two other things. At work, those people that I trust, and I have been fortunate and have generally worked with, I'm an educator, and in the classroom it was really easier because I was a preschool teacher and I got to play all day. So, that was perfect for my ADHD brain. But now I'm an administrator and I have been for several years. And so the people that I work with, I have not necessarily disclosed officially at work, but everybody knows, and they know like triggers, and they know what they need to remind me of, and if something is coming up, and they are generally very good about it and don't seem to be annoyed. Partly, I think, because I admit it and we laugh about it, but just because maybe I've just been fortunate to work with really good people.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Life with Lost Keys. I think that's the first of what I hope to be many live episodes that we do. So I'm going to look around. Twitter Spaces was a cool platform to try out. We may keep it there for the next one. We may jump over to YouTube Live. We may do it in our Discord. Whichever one of those you show up to, I'll let you know far in advance. If you're on the email list, I'll send the email list message out so that you know it's coming. And in the meantime, once again, thank you for listening to Life with Lost Keys. My name is Renee Brooks. Our producer is Yakini Ladisi, and the music is by her too. Talk soon.